Hello and welcome to the Book Bunch, guys. My name is Sam. Thank you to all my new subscribers, and I really want to say an extra special thank you to all my new subscribers because we have made it to the 100 subscriber mark. So thank you all for those who have come. I know a lot of you have come from over on other booktubers channels, so thank you so much for making your way over here and joining my little corner of booktube. I hope you enjoy my videos and that I don't ramble too much, but this week's video is going to be a recap of pretty much all of the books, or at least majority of all of the books that I read in the last 2 weeks of August. It is mostly fantasy, but there is some non-fiction in there as well. It is all Christian fiction or Christian non-fiction, or at least claiming to be. So we are going to get right into it. Some of it might be ones you've already heard me talk about, but I don't know if I've properly dedicated time to them enough, so I might be kind of talking about them again here, but it's okay. Bear with me. Sorry if it's a bit of a disaster. Everything's a bit of a disaster at the moment. So we'll get right into it. And yeah, hope you enjoy this video. So I am going to start off with a bang, being the Ravenwood saga. So I know I have already spoken to you guys about the Mark of the Raven in a previous video. However, since that time, I have finished the series and I need to talk about it. So this is the series. It ended really well. It ends in a really good place, which I really appreciated. I am not one for tragedies very much, so when they end well, I am a happy chappy. So it ends well. For those of you that are wondering, it is such a good series. It is heavy on the Christian themes, so just be aware of that. I know for most of you that are here, you are Christian, so it probably won't bother you, but if you are someone who has meandered over from other places, it does have very strong Christian themes, so just be aware of that. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was kind of refreshing to see it in a fantasy series, especially. I know there's a lot of books out there that are kind of put under the Christian blanket by publishers and all of that kind of thing, but they don't really have any Christian content in it, whereas this definitely does. It is, what is it about? Okay, for those of you who don't know, the Ravenwood saga follows our main lady, Selene. She is Lady Selene Ravenwood, and she comes from the Ravenwood house, from one of the 7 great houses in this country, and she is the heir to the throne of this part of the country, and she and her family have been harboring all of these secrets from the other houses for years, which is that their special gift has not died off like they had thought, and they have been using their gift for evil. Selene finds this out when she comes of age to receive her gift, and she is absolutely horrified by what she finds out and has this very strong struggle between trying to live up to the family name and doing what she must do to make sure her sisters don't have to fulfill that role in her place, and just the moral struggle of she knows it's not right and wants to do better. It is a whole journey. There is love and there is just craziness that goes on, and it is so good. I really enjoyed it. I had never read a Morgan L. Bussey book before this, and man, it was a great place to start. She has really set the bar high, so now I'm a little worried that her other books aren't going to live up, but we'll see, because I'm definitely going to pick up anything else that she has written. And yeah, she's definitely on my auto buy author list now, but definitely pick it up. I'm not going to go into spoilers of the other 2 books because you just need to pick it up and read it. It is really good if you like anything remotely fantasy and or assassin-y at all. I'm also going to recap the Story Peddler for you guys. I believe this is one I have also briefly mentioned in a previous video, but I want to, yeah, like I said, give it a bit more airtime because I feel like it is good and it deserves it. So this book, I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. I really enjoyed it. I would probably give it like almost a 5, if not a 5. I can't remember what I rated it last time, but it's definitely really up there. This is part of the Weaver trilogy. I have since picked up book 2, but I haven't read it yet. It's in my TBR. It's sitting up here waiting for me to get to. But it was a really interesting story. I didn't love the main character at first. It took a lot of her character development and more storyline for me to really like her, but I liked the story enough to keep going, which is why this ended up being a really good book for me. So this follows a kind of peasant, kind of orphan girl who she has the gift of story peddling. So what that means is when she tells stories, these colourful strings, as seen on the front cover, come out of her hands and they create these like crystalline structures, and if she ends the story it like solidifies and you've got this like sculpture thing. And then but she lives in this world where the king that has recently come to power has only allowed certain stories to be told. So the only ones that can be told are ones with the king's approval, and if you sway from that you get executed. And only specific people can be story peddlers, and when you tell your story you have to tell it exactly, and if the colors of the strings that come out of your fingers aren't the right colors you can get executed, all this stuff. Like, it's this whole thing. And yes, she is an apprentice story peddler. She's about to finish her like apprenticeship, and she man, I've lost my train of thought. Do you ever get that where you're like talking and you're like really involved and then your brain just shuts off? Yeah, that's me. Okay, so sorry about that. Yes, she is an apprentice story peddler, and she is off doing one of her normal usual routines of telling stories, and then a stray thread comes out of her hand that shouldn't. That's the wrong color, and before you know it, she gets like in this kind of on the run adventure where she is being hunted down by the king's men. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. There is a whole group of story peddlers that are like rebels that are trying to fight back against the king, and they're in hiding and all sorts of stuff. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It definitely didn't go where I thought it would go, but it was really, really good, so I highly recommend it. Speaking of colours in stories, I'm going to talk about Aurelia's colours. This has a very similar vibe, I guess, to the Story Peddler, in the sense that we follow this main girl named Aurelia, and she has this power or gift, I guess you can say, where she can make colours, and they kind of have this power imbued with them that she doesn't like to acknowledge that part of her gift. But yeah, she can basically see colors and find colors and make colors that people didn't know existed and different things like that. And she is also an orphan girl, except she is raised by like these thieves and thugs and people called the Gatherers that are like kind of excluded from the city as punishment, but they are still in the king's service because like they have to go and gather like and forage in the forest and stuff and then bring it to the king so they don't get executed and for things. So she's been raised by them, and she's got this powers, and similar to the Story Peddler, a bunch of the colors are outlawed and there's only specific things that are approved by the king and all of that kind of stuff, and if you sway from that you get executed. So it's similar in that sense, but the story is so different. So yeah, I didn't like this as much as The Story Peddler. I would probably give this only a 3.5 out of 5, just because the ending was a bit lackluster for me. It has no romance and it didn't go anywhere that I thought it would. I normally like my fantasy to at least have a touch, just a touch of romance. I'm not a romance reader. I don't want that to be the main story, but I like it as a little sideline thing to be like, oh, that's so cute, like in the background, you know what I mean? But this has none of that. And you kind of expect it the whole way through, and then it never happens, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. So that might also be why it's only 3.5 for me, because I was expecting it the whole time, and then it didn't happen, and so I was a bit disappointed. But I definitely recommend reading it if you like any of the more classic Christian fantasy things. This is very much so in that vein. It is considered more of a classic fantasy as well. When it comes to Christian fiction, I don't like the cover either. I think it's ugly. um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll hold on to it just because it. I don't think I'd ever revisit it, but that's Aurelia's Colours. I also read The Wing Feather Tales, which is the collection of short stories by Andrew Peterson and his friends, all set within the world of the Wing Feather saga. I love, as you know, if you've watched probably any of my videos at this point, you would know I absolutely love the Wing Feather saga. It is my favorite series of all time. It is probably my favorite books of all time. It is like my number one of one. If I could only ever read a single fiction series or book again for the rest of my life, it would be that. I would choose that. But yes, this is set in the same world. I was a little sad that it only came in hardcover because I'm not a huge hardcover fan, but that's okay. I can forgive. And yes, I liked a lot of the stories that were in here, especially the ones that were obviously written by Andrew himself, just because it has his natural funniness in it. And there was one other, I think it was the one by Jennifer Trafton. She also has a similar vibe to him in like the comical aspect of the writing and the whimsy kind of in the writing, which I liked. But there was a couple in there that I was like, nah, this is alright. I could take it or leave it. There is a really cute, I don't know if that's the right word, nice poem in there, or song, I guess you'd say. I don't know. But it goes for quite a few pages, and it was quite nice to read. I like that. And for you, if I can find it, the graphic novel ones of like lovers, there's like a section, there's a story of like a comic, which is really cool. That Andrew Peterson wrote with one of his illustrator friends. So, yes, it was pretty good overall. It wasn't like anywhere near as good as the Wing Feather Saga, but if you're a fan and you want more of that world of AOER, then definitely pick it up. Yeah, I'd probably give it a 3.75 out of 5. Because yeah, some of them in the stories were like 5, and others are like a 2 or a 3. So it kind of just depends, and it's probably personal taste as well. I also picked up and read 2 of Nadine Brandes' books. I foolishly, in a previous video, thought that the Ravenwood Saga was also written by the same author. In my brain, for some reason, when I was filming that video, it was all one other thing, and I mentioned it, and that like is not accurate at all. They're 2 completely different ladies, and they are both extremely good writers. So sorry about that to you fans out there, but I read both of Nadine Brandes' historical alternate history novels. I worked out what it's called. It's alternate history, guys. I couldn't think of what that genre was called, and I asked for help, and help came. You guys responded, and it is alternate history is what I was talking about. So yes, it is really awesome. The first one is Romanov, which follows the Romanov family, which was the last Russian royals before like the revolution happened in Russia, and they became I want to say democratic country where like the people, like there's like a president, I think. I don't know. I'm really bad at history, so don't quote me on that. please in the comments below correct me, because I don't know what I'm talking about. So we'll go with that. The person that is in charge of Russia at the moment is not a king, is what I'm trying to say. And when all of that happened, however many years ago that was, this is about that last family of royalty. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Anyway, it was really good. I really liked it. There's love in there, which was unexpected. I can't say that I expected it. That's a dumb sentence. Anyway, I can't say that I expected it. Yes, so I definitely recommend reading it. It was really good. I really liked it. I did like it, I think, more than Forks. I'd probably give this a 5 and probably this a 4.5, because this just didn't have the vibes, and I think it's possibly because she wrote this after this, so I think it's more just like her writing got better, if that makes sense. I guess that makes sense. I'm a confusing person to follow along with, and I'm in a weird mood, so sorry if I'm a bit crazy, guys. But yes, Fawkes is about Guy Fawkes and that whole revolution that happened and why we have Guy Fawkes Day and all of that kind of thing, even though here in Australia we don't celebrate that. I know overseas that's like a big deal, but yes, this is the story of him and his mysterious son. It follows his son mostly, who may or may not have been real. From what I understood from her, she's got like a section in the back of each of these that's like what's true and what's fiction and all of that. And from what I understood, he is made up, but there is a chance that Guy Fawkes did have a son. But she kind of like just took that possibility and ran with it, which I love. It was great. But yeah, it follows his son, and there's this whole like cool magic thing in like magic system in this, where like you only get your magic if your father or mother, depending on if you're a boy or a girl, carves you a mask that allows you to connect with colors. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's very cool. Again, another color one. Something about all the books I'm reading, all the magic is to do with colors at the moment. But yes, it was very good. I do recommend it. That is that. Also, if you have any questions and want me to like divulge into some of these a little bit more, let me know, because I can do full reviews on them that have all the spoilers and everything if you want, or if you just want me to chat with you about it, happy to do that too. So let me know in the comments below. But yes, now we're getting into the more non-fiction-y kind of ones. This one is both fiction and non-fiction. So this is Beowulf by J.R.R. Tolkien, edited and compiled by his son Christopher. This is half fiction and half non-fiction, because there is the translation of Beowulf, which is obviously fiction, the translation or writing of the Selec spell in here, and then there is also like poem version and stuff in the back as well. So half of it is fiction and follows like the Beowulf kind of situation, and then the other chunk of it is there is a rather large commentary by Christopher Tolkien, and I can't quite remember. I think a bunch of it was also J.R.R. Tolkien's notes from when he was translating it and doing lectures on it and all the rest of it. It was really interesting. I didn't read all of the non-fiction-y part of it just because that's not why I had picked up the book. That was just like a bonus thing I found in the book. I actually bought it because I thought this whole thing was the translation of Beowulf, because I've never read Beowulf before. I've never seen the movie. I've heard it thrown around, but I knew nothing about it. So I thought I'd pick it up. It is hard to read, even as a translation into a more normal kind of English. I actually preferred the Select Spell, and then the really cool poems at the end. They were awesome. I kind of want to print them out and like frame them or something, because I did like the poems at the end. But the actual Beowulf, like I understood what was going on, but it wasn't very exciting to me. Yeah, I'm not going to really go into the story of it for you because it's very short, and if I start telling you what Beowulf's about, you kind of get like in too much detail. You'll not need to read the story, but basically it follows Beowulf, who is a man in charge of this kind of like elite army thing, and he goes and like does stuff for the king and goes on these missions and defeats these beasts and all this stuff. That's where I'll leave it. Now it's in your hands. Go read it. It's like 100 pages, maybe. So, nonfiction. I've got Reflections on the Psalms by C.S. Lewis. I was very interested and surprised by this. It's, again, not what I had expected it to be when I had picked it up. A lot of books aren't because I don't really pay attention when I pick them up or read the blurb or anything. I kind of just go in blind and then I go, I didn't expect it to be like this, and then wonder why. It's a bit silly. I'm a bit silly. But Reflections on the Psalms. This was really interesting. It is just C.S. Lewis' thoughts. That was a bit of a tongue twister. On the Psalms, and he just breaks it down into different topics that he noticed or trends he noticed in the Psalms. I really liked it. He brought to light some things I never knew about, especially when it comes to like the Hebrew versus like the rest of it. Does that make sense? Like the Hebrew versus our translations. There we go. That makes sense. And finally, I read 2 books to kind of help with my mental health and just my faith in general. So I got Forgiving What You Can't Forget and Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. I really recommend Forgiving What You Can't Forget for anyone who wants to know more about forgiveness and the journey that forgiveness takes you on, and or are struggling with that. I was going through a period of time where I was really struggling with forgiving some people in my life, and it was just kind of coming to a head, and I knew I needed to deal with it, and I picked this up hoping that it might help me work through it, and it absolutely did. It is such an amazing book, and I highly recommend it. Yeah, for everybody. I think every Christian should read it because forgiveness is like a cornerstone of our faith. So yeah, it was so good. I just picked mine up from my local Christian bookstore, Koorong, and yeah, I don't want to really say too much more about it because it's a non-fiction book about forgiveness, but yeah, it just is about this lady who talks about the things she's had to forgive in her life and how she's gone on this journey with herself and with God and with her psychologist and all of that, and some tips to help you out. And then Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess was really interesting. This is written by Dr. Caroline Leaf. So it is written by a female neurologist, and I think she's a pathologist, sorry. Communication pathologist and neurologist, there we go. And she is been studying mental health and all of that kind of thing and how that affects your brain and your body for like the last 30 years. And she's very knowledgeable on the topic. This is very heavy on the science. So if you're not a science person, just be aware of that because I am not really, and it was very heavy on that. I did appreciate it though because it made some things a bit like she broke it down and spoke about it in a way that was kind of easy to understand or at least keep along with. And this basically goes through her 5 steps to how you can think better, and it doesn't have to be about like depression or anxiety or like feelings. It can be about like analytical and logical things as well. And it just is a method of thinking in such a way that helps your brain and rewires your brain to do whatever you need it to do or think whatever it needs to think. It's rather cool. It's rather interesting. I'm definitely going to try and implement this into my everyday, but we'll see how we go because it can be a bit of a struggle sometimes. So that's what I read in the last like 2 weeks. It's quite a lot, I know, but I will continue to read ridiculous amounts as much as I possibly can fit into my schedule because I like reading so much. If you have any advice or books you want to recommend or things you want me to do for future videos, please let me know in the comments below. Yes, thank you to my 100 subscribers. You guys are awesome, and I am so grateful, and thank you to God for making this happen, and I just pray that, yeah, this somehow brings him glory. So yes, have a wonderful week, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!